There. Got it. Welcome to the Pure Light Project podcast. My name is Andrea Mai, and today I have on my good friend Scott Shang, and we are just going to have a lot of fun exploring how we can bring our light into any kind of environment, any kind of industry or workplace. We're also just going to riff. We're just going to see where we go. But for me, that's been a really important thing to recognize that not all people who view themselves as light workers or star seeds or whatever it is, right? Whatever it is that you identify and you're focused on bringing in the light, we're everywhere. And we don't see that representation. And so that's like, I am so fortunate to know Scott, and we've known each other for about 3 years now. And I think it's a conversation that maybe a lot of people are just not having. So I'm ready to have that. Plus, Scott and I like to hang out Friday afternoons a lot of times and just and dive into this. So we're recording it for a podcast today.
There we go.
So Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is really fun. Like you said, we have so many of these conversations just on Friday afternoons usually. So it's kind of cool. This has actually been a mission of mine as well, to have these conversations in places. I call it the fly on the wall. So you give people an opportunity to be a fly on the wall on these conversations, because, you know, I have these conversations with you and a lot of people, and and for you and I, it's intentional, but for a lot of times it's unintentional. But I always find myself thinking, man, if people could just listen in on this conversation, I think it would give them permission to feel some of the things that they feel that they can't explain, and think some of the things that they think that feel like it goes against the grain, or it doesn't fit into their structure of how society thinks that you should be talking about certain things. And you know, and I love that you have this platform where we can just be open and have a safe place to just have these conversations and not care about who listens to it or who hears it, and not feel like we're going to be judged or people are going to misunderstand. I think I almost find that nobody's going to accidentally find these conversations. They're going to manifest these conversations, and it'll just appear. Like, that's how it always happens to me, right? Yeah. We'll be talking, or we'll be thinking about something, or you and I'll have a conversation, and then somebody mentions it on TV, or I'll find a book that says something that we were just talking about. And I really believe that that is kind of how we go through this journey. And it's not as accidental or coincidental as I think a lot of people think.
Yeah. It's fascinating how we come into connection with people. And it's like those, especially those connections where you're like, there's something there, right? That is unseen, that's like bringing you together for whatever reason. And sometimes it takes time, for it to, like, you think it's this, and then like you turn a corner energetically and whoa, wait, what just happened? What is this? Oh, you've been holding out on me all this time, right? And that's like, I recognize that I probably had, I don't know if you say that I was being dishonest with myself, but I just recognize that, like, I listen deeply, and I drop seeds and I wait. I never force conversations around the things that are meaningful to my heart. I've been walking this journey for a long time. It felt like I was especially the last few years, right? I had been in spiritual communities, but that even felt like this was that silo. Over here is
Yeah.
this silo,
Yeah.
and then the last 4 years, like a lot shifted. And I found myself for the first time, maybe being a little hesitant to have the conversations with people who I didn't know where they stood on things. And like I'm weary from that. And so you and we worked together on cool projects for your company for, I don't know, a year and a half, two, well, probably at least, yeah, a
At
year and a
least.
half,
Yeah.
and before. But so I want to preface this with why I even know Scott, okay? Because this is what's funny. For the last few years, I was an insurance underwriter for a long time. And then in 2019, I made a shift because I've always been a writer. I've always been in the spiritual communities, spiritual journey, doing a lot of, I really have always stepped into a leadership role. That's my heart. I am here to share how to wake up from this illusion. And that's always been part of my path for as long as I can remember. But, like I said, I don't push it. I just allow it to arise. And so as a writer for a while, I was doing freelance work to support as I built out the work that with my books and that sort of thing. So anyways, I have this friend who I was doing work with, and he goes to some conference. He's a mortgage broker, and I was doing some writing work and just helping him out with things. And he goes to this conference and he gets all excited about this guy who's offering this incredible program. And I'm like, okay. He's like, come on the call with me. And so I get on the call with him, and it's Scott. Scott is this incredible guy with this incredible program. And we're on the call, and I'm like, who is this guy? He's like I'm the one who they call the calm one, and this guy's he's so relaxed. I just feel like I'm just floating, and that made me want to know who he was, because his heart and his frequency was just ping, ping, ping for me. And so we connected, but we didn't go deep. Our first conversation, we talked a little bit about the Tao Te Ching, and how that touched both our lives. And I just kept thinking, this is somebody I'm supposed to know for something, And so anyways, that's where it started for me, was this curiosity of who's this person in front of me. And I wanted to go deeper, but it took time.
Yeah.
He had me working on some of your projects, Scott, and then it just evolved over this winter. It really we turned a corner, whatever that was that allowed that to happen. And it was like, wow. So.
Yeah. I want to make a comment on something you said a little bit earlier about how hard it is to know when and how to talk about these things, and how to express some of these things around people. And where I think I've landed on this is that it is entirely nonverbal, and that it truly is energy. And it's hard to trust. It's hard to wrap your head around that. But as soon as you can, you realize that attraction and that connection is made on a higher self level. It's made on a different vibration, and then our physical beings are pulled into it. But it's made before we even have that. So I just find myself I don't think about how to talk about things. Like if somebody says something, I just end up finding myself saying, well, that's not something that you have control over. You only have control over the choices that you make on how to deal with the thing that just happened to you. And then people will either, buy into it or not. But it seems like every time I see a door opens for that, it was already set up ahead of time. Like there was already an energy connection. And that used to happen to me a lot, but and my journey has been really strange. Um, I had a lot of strange things happen when I was younger that I couldn't explain. And then I tried to play life for a while. I call it my 40 years in the desert. And then I really started focusing again and trying to regain um, that stuff that seemed so magical, and things that I couldn't explain when I was young, just thoughts that I had and feelings that I had, and ways that I pushed back against like the organized religion and church and things like that. And when I started exploring that now, it I can't help myself from saying, oh, that's so weird that that happened. But the second it comes out of my mouth, I'm like, it's not weird. It's exactly the way that it was supposed to be. And it was, and it's not a coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidences. I think you're always where you're supposed to be, and you're always doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that has something, you call it, you bring your light with you. And you also mentioned trust. And I think for me, that's what it was, is, my big turning point is, I always say I've been searching for God my entire life because I knew there was one. And I think this was our conversation, is the first identification of God was Tao Te Ching. And because it was free from um, rules and labels and all of these other things, it was just speaking to the energy. And I can say within the last year that I have found God, and now I just seek to understand. And so coincidence isn't even a thing that comes into my life. It's just, I just trust the process. I just trust the thing. And I don't care whether the person on the other side of the conversation, like if the door opens and I have something to say about it, I know that it's something that I'm supposed to say. I stopped questioning, because I think that's what I did for a long time. And I think that's what a lot of us do. And maybe the people in your community is, we question, should I say something, or what are they going to think if I say this? But it really just comes down to trusting yourself, and just trusting that you are comfortable in your own skin and in your own path. And I think more importantly than that, and especially for me, because this was a hard one for me, is everybody who truly seeks to understand light, source, God, you call it whatever you want, is on the right path. There is no wrong way. People do it through different channels. They have different beliefs. Some people burn candles and incense. Some people meditate. Some people pray. The path is irrelevant if the destination is the same. And that was one of the really big things in my life, because I used to make judgments about, that's woo woo, that's that's kind of out there, well, that's kind of weird, and what's this channeling stuff, that's kind of crazy, and what do you mean people reading numbers and energy healers, and there's so much societal stigma around these things. But when you truly get to know the people that are in those spaces, they're all embracing the exact same light. They just had maybe different path or different footsteps, but they're all moving in the same direction. And the ones that are truly seeking out that light, they're beautiful. Like, I mean, everybody's beautiful. You know, some people just they don't see it or not. Um, but you just realize we truly are all just different refractions of the exact same source of light. We're just different particles of the rainbow, of the beam, of the light beam, but we're all part of that same light. We're just different photons in the same beam of light.
Yeah. And, you know, I've been having this really both visceral and mystical experience for the last few weeks of really recognizing that we are just, I've always loved metaphors around the ocean and the waves, you know, but really really feeling that we are that which is arising in this over here, and I'm this wave over here, or I'm this dot here and you're that dot there. But when you bring it back, you know, and it's like, and it's becoming more and more like an extension of myself. I just don't quite, you know, I maybe can't see the chords, the etheric chord, not even chord, stream between us. It's like I'm over here, and like
Yeah.
it's very, I sense it, I see it more and
Yes.
more in my field, and noticing how that shifts, I guess, the way I interact, you know. um I mean, I've had really deep experiences of oneness and of the void of, or the origin field is what I call it, you know, really meaningful experiences of that, and really losing myself in
Mhm.
it, to it, um because I became it, or
Mhm.
I remembered that I was it, and that, and so, but these dynamics, you know, of when you look at like the yin and yang, you know, the symbol has really been on my heart lately, feeling into, you know, these polarities, duality, but it's really like there really isn't. It's a tension that we hold of this action and inspiration, you know, and seeing how these things work together. And so we can have all the inspiration in the world, um, but without some sort of action, some step towards whatever it is. And so anyways, it's just like I'm starting to really like feel, see, and sense much more multidimensionally
Yeah.
the web that we are. And so I'm sitting here looking at you, and my heart, like, I mean, you're in Colorado, I'm in Tennessee, and like the thread is, it's microscopic, the distance between us, you know. At the same time, there's 1,200 miles, you know, or something.
Yeah.
But it's a really phenomenal thing. And I love what you said, you know, about trusting yourself.
Yeah.
When we're not here to convince or manipulate somebody else into having to believe or see or sense as we do, it, it's a lot. You know, you can trust, if you can trust that, if you can commit to stop trying to convince, and just trust that it's okay to show up as yourself, because you're actually the only one who can give that permission to yourself.
Yeah. And trust that everyone else's perspective is okay. It's just where they're at. I think a lot of times, and I know when I was younger, I always felt like I always felt like there was a path or a truth. So I was always seeking that channel or that modality or that thing. And I think that those guardrails are built with fear that we could, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm, and anything outside of that is wrong? And what if I'm not loving the right way? Or what if I'm not, communicating with source the right way? Or, and maybe the bigger one is, and this kind of comes down to like prayer. What if I don't pray right, does that mean I don't connect with source? And and there's and like all of those things, it took me a long time to understand that the answer is not yes or no, it's always and. It's like, this is the path and that is their path, and that is, it's, and I love the way that you brought this perspective into it in the ocean and the waves, because it's literally, we all have different perspectives of the exact same thing. We're just seeing it from different angles, from different races or sexes or religions or beliefs or whatever, but we're all just trying to understand the same thing. And nobody's wrong and nobody's right. Everybody just is where they are. And where you are is not where you will be tomorrow or the next day or the next day or the next year or the next 10 years. You're going, as you gain perspective, you expand your vibration and you expand your awareness, and then you start to realize that it truly is infinite. And I think that's the crazy part about it, is we all, and this is a societal programming, we all think there's a destination or there's a place that we're supposed to be or get to. But the reality is it's not the destination, it's the journey. That's the only thing that's important. There is no destination.
Yeah.
Destination is incomprehensible in the state of existence that we are in.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Yeah. That that right there, what you spoke to, took up more of my life energy. That noodling in my head
Mhm.
took up so many years of my life. Uh,
It only took 50 of my years, as long as I've been thinking about it.
yeah,
And I think I always feel like I'm just scratching the surface. I always feel like it's new every single day,
yeah.
right?
A couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, the message came through because I'm like, I'm so weary. I'm so tired. I I had a very fixed notion of enlightenment.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought, I don't know what more there is for me to do here. I also know that at that time I had a sort of a choice point. It was January of last year. And I was like, I just want to return home. And the message that came through was, there is no return. You are home, right? There is no return. And that has rang out inside of me over and over again at certain times when I sort of feel that again. And
Mhm.
a friend pointed that out again this week. It's, it's not sort of this depressed feeling or this, it's not like, oh, I'm ready to, make the exit. It's just a matter of sometimes the earth is real heavy, even when you are walking with light in a very high vibrational state like it. And the more as we sort of make this shift and the densities fall away, you know, it looks more and more like chaos. And so then we have the invitation, if we so choose, because everything's choice,
Mhm.
to do we stay up here or do we go down here? And it's all a choice. Like I really firmly, like, as much as I can believe anything. Um, so like I want to see how this game turns out, you know, like in this moment for myself and for all of us. And recognizing like that it turns out exactly as it is in the moment that I'm in it. You know, I don't have to wait anymore. I've been waiting. I think a lot of us have been waiting for when are we turning that corner? We can turn it
Yes.
right now ourselves. And I kept
Yeah.
waiting for like more of us. And I'm like, wait, more of us aren't going to turn it until we turn it for ourselves individually.
So how that realization came to me was when I fully wrapped my head around the fact that there is no such thing as the past and there is no such thing as the future. There is only now. And those are concepts that we make up because nobody really remembers what happened in the past. You have certain feelings about it, but you can change your perspective on how that happened, and then that past experience changes. And there is no such thing as but we get so caught up on, I make this decision because of my perception of the past, and I need to make this decision so that I can influence the future. But neither of those exist. There is only now. And you make the choice in the moment, and we literally make that choice, and there is no right or wrong. There is only the choice that you make. And then you live the consequences of that choice, and then you make another choice. Was that the right choice? Does that choice have to change? There's no baggage, and you can't determine the future by the choice that you make today. You can only determine you can't even determine, you only have an opportunity to make the next choice in the next moment. So even when we get consumed and when the earth feels heavy and when it draws us down and we're like, man, how am I going to pay that bill? How am I going to, how are these things going to happen? There's any amount of time you spend thinking about what might happen in the future or what has happened in the past is time that you're not making a choice in the moment. And what it almost always comes down to for me is trusting the moment and trusting that that choice is made from a place of love, and it's made from a place of, am I loving myself? Am I loving everybody around me? Am I loving source? And am I doing it for the right reasons? Right? Is it coming from the right place? And if it's coming from the right place, it's the right choice. It's not our responsibility to decipher the consequences of our choices. It's our responsibility only to make the next choice within the consequences, the confines of the consequences that we find ourselves in. It's fun talking about this stuff because you can't draw a picture and say, here's the picture. It's like, it's all so intangible and ethereal. It's just, I always feel like I'm just barely grasping at the edges of it making sense. But at the end of the day, in my heart, deep in the middle of my heart, you got to trust the light and it'll tell you. And this was one of the first things I learned about religions is I learned very early on religions that there was so much truth to all of them. And I kind of came up with this rule for myself. I always ignore the medium and I always ignore the messenger. And I just feel it. And I don't care where you got the message from, and I don't care whose lips it came from or what book it came from. I just feel it. And does it feel right? And does it make sense? And if it does, then it should feel like a hug. It should feel warm. It should feel like love if it's real, if it's true. And I, but that took so long in my life. And I still find myself judging mediums and messengers. That can't be right, that can't be true. And that's okay. It's healthy to have that, but then you have to be able to anchor that reaction, anchor that back into your heart chakra, anchor that back into your center, and really feel it, and say, is there truth in that? And that's the only thing you have to trust, is that feeling that you just have that you feel of overwhelming love. If you can recognize that, then everything else is just, there's no pressure. Just take it as it is and see how it feels to you.
Yeah. And I think it's like, for me, it's really important to notice that what I experience is truth. Like there are some things that, like the innate nature of reality, the ineffable way, whatever you call that, like it holds all the answers, but it is not necessarily like I as you come into the higher frequencies or the higher states or experiences, like recognizing it's all play, it's all experiment, it's their choices, and you take that choice and you follow that path and see what happens, and then you make, like you said, the next decision, the next choice. But um it's funny you talk about bringing it into your center. And it's funny because like I'm pinging all over the place here because I was talking to a friend earlier and she asked me to write a poem. I'm writing 51 poems because I turned 51 a couple weeks ago. And so I'm putting this collection together, and she asked me, it's the first time somebody asked me, would I write a poem for that collection? And I'm almost done. I'm like down to the last couple of them. If I would write one about center,
Mm.
and so like this conversation is feeding into that. It's beautiful. I would like to take a minute for us, and let's just come into our center. And I invite whoever's listening to this to just come in to your center and feel it for a moment. Recognize it for yourself. And go just a little bit longer. Just stay there. Yeah. I could stay there a long, long time.
I think one of the biggest turning points in me getting back on my path was creating space, because the world is so noisy and there's just so much stimulus everywhere. I mean, we carry these distraction machines around in our pockets all day long, and there's just traffic and noise and airplanes and all of this stuff. And for me, it was sensory deprivation floats. And it was, and what was so pivotal for me is that I didn't realize until I started doing that how much noise and light there is in the world that distracts us, how much there is to see and hear and all this stuff. And like I tried to meditate, but my monkey brain just, like, it was hard to concentrate because I could hear things going around. And when I started doing the floats and my head is underwater and there's no light, and the water is body temperature and you're naked, so there's nothing, no restrictions, and it's dead quiet and there's no light. And that's when I really, really started to find, and then you find that it's not quiet at all. There's so much that comes out of that, but it comes from source. It doesn't come from external. Like it really allowed me to connect with my energy and not the physical world, because the matrix just seems so real. It's like I love how that how that whole movie is just a metaphor for spiritual awakening, and how great that they nailed it. And it was clearly divinely inspired, right, in a way that connected with a lot of people, because we talk about it a lot, but
Yeah, there's a
when
lot
you
of those.
when you connect with your center, and when you really, really find that place, you just realize how different it is from everything else in the rest of your life. It really creates separation between light and matter. And that was when that for me was like when I could actually recognize that separation and feel that separation, and whatever way. I think that's all what we're trying to do, is connect with that light and let everything else fall away, right?
Yeah.
Is being in that place.
Yeah. I've loved and felt and written and talked a lot about the space within the spaces, the sacred gap, between the in breath and the out breath. And I had this visualization the other day. I just spent 7 weeks in a fairly remote place, and so much space, so much space. I grew up in, like, way out in the country up north, and I've lived in a city. Like, I mean, I've got an acre. It's, out in the suburb, there's a lot of space, but still, like, what I recognized is these walls that it's like there's part of us, the part that had agreed to come in and be in this society. We wanted to experience what it was like. How much can we condense people into cities, into enclosed spaces? How much can we take music? And I remember, like, when music changed, maybe like in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it just became this wall of noise. Like, there was no space in the music,
Mhm.
and suddenly it didn't feel right to my ears. It didn't feel right to my body. Like, so
Mhm.
much of it was just compressed, compressed, compressed. You'd go to a live show and you'd listen to music recorded maybe a decade earlier. There was space between the words, space between the notes, and we've just compressed and compressed and compressed. There's a woman who I really appreciate the work she's done, and she talks a lot about diamonds, and like the pressure of a diamond, like what it takes for coal to become a diamond, and it's pressure, and like that's what we're in right now. and it really doesn't matter if you're in a city or you're in the country. Like everything around us is super compacted, super condensed, push, 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 so that we transform. I've never had this conversation before, other than in my head. So,
Well, I love this conversation, and I've never thought of it in that. I've never thought of it in that way, but I have had the conversation, and it seems like more and more often about, what the country's going through, and the tension, and race, and all of this kind of stuff. And it seems like all of this stuff is coming together, and people are like, well, isn't that horrible? And I'm like, well, no, it's not, because it creates perspective. And this is the yin and the yang that you were talking about. And it's not just black and white. There's also the black and the white inside of the black and the white. And it's that polarity. And I've always known that light is only as bright as its exact opposite. So the darker the dark, it gives you the perspective to see the equal and opposite light to it. And I don't think it's a mistake that society is not trusting the power structure anymore, and they don't trust the government, and the tension is creating all of these diamonds, which I think we're the diamonds. And anybody who's listening to this, and the more the pressure, I think, the more confident and calm I feel in where I'm at. And it feels like it's easier and easier for me to see the infraction of light from 1,200 miles away that's coming from Andrea. It's like it's so much more clear, because it's so dark around us. It's so much easier to see the points of light. And you realize there are so many points of light that are in this. And I think that a lot of that is, we can talk about the shift and the vibrations, and the elevation of the vibration of the planet, and all of this kind of stuff. And and all of that is supported by the fact that it feels like, as the illusion falls away, I think that's the pressure. And it's also hard for me to have perspective on this, because I always wonder, does every generation feel the same way we do? Because our changes are different, but like our parents went from Vietnam in the 60s, and then our grandparents were in World War II, and their grandparents were in World War I, and then the Civil War. And like every generation has these crazy changes, and these shifts, and these polarities. And all we can reflect on is from our perspective, from where we sit. But it seems like it happens for every generation. And then I think, that pressure has been happening for multiple generations. In order for us, diamonds aren't created in one generation. Like our energy has been compressed and been going through this for many, many, many experiences. And I think we're just getting more clarity and more brightness, and we're able to refract the light better than before. It's I love that metaphor, though, of the diamonds. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that, but it makes so much sense. I can see it. It's a very, very good metaphor for what comes out of pressure.
Yeah. And our minds, right, are so inclined, we've been trained, we've been programmed, whatever you want to call it. We agreed to look at certain things as good and other things as bad. And I'm so thankful for the years and years of training I had on the meditation cushion and learning to drop the labels and the judgments and just witness and then dissolve, you know,
Mhm.
um, and just be the labels. Who is to say, like, I walk around all day and I do hear that nonstop of this is good, this is bad. And like, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I ran out in a rainstorm the other day, and most people have been programmed to think that, oh my gosh, I just got soaking wet and my outfit's ruined, and oh, my new tent is, oh gosh, and it's like, I had the most fun, like, and I use the weather a lot because that's the one thing, weather and traffic, like everybody's gonna grumble and complain,
Yeah.
um,
Two
and
things you have zero control over.
yeah, like, just enjoy it. I was
Yeah.
in an exercise class. I've like never been like a gym class kind of person, but I'm having so much fun right now because my body's like, hey babe, we're 51 and like we want to do some more things. So let's take care of this beautiful temple. And so I was in this class, and you can tell the instructors who are used to people complaining a lot. Like, I've taken one or two classes every day for the last week, and like
Oh, wow.
there's some who you can tell they're just like, they're ready, they know people are going to be like, oh, and it's like, man, I'm having the best time, you know but I also, like, I used to be a big caretaker of, I wanted everybody in the room. So I would go around, even in a facilitation role, I'd make sure that everybody was not feeling too awkward or uncomfortable or
Mm,
unprepared for what was coming. And
yeah.
I always thought, man, like the teachers in the retreats I did, I'm like, why did some of them just leave you in the mystery? Like, just set the whole container was uncertain. And the further along I get, I'm like, oh yeah, that's where the magic is. Yeah. And so I lean into that more and more when I work with people. And um and it's surprising when people find out that they're okay in the
Right.
uncertainty.
Right.
Oh,
That's probably the biggest one is, or the biggest lesson that I've had is it always ends up being okay. Regardless of how much you wanted to control a situation, it's just going to unfold the way that it's going to unfold. And you just have to, well, the best way I can describe it is you just have to trust the process. Because we spend so much of our energy in life having an opinion about things that we have absolutely no control over.
yeah.
And it's heavy. It's heavy. And when you just appreciate it for what it is, and you look for the, what does this tell me about myself? Right. So it's yeah, it's I'm having, I'm having I'm just having so much fun right now. In my life, I've just shed so many rules, so many judgments, so many things. It's all fallen away. It doesn't mean that I don't, stub my toe on reality, on perceived reality every once in a while. Um, but I very quickly understand that, well, you shouldn't have been dragging your feet, whatever, metaphorically speaking. If it's and you've been a big part of this. You've been a big part of this for me. It's our conversations and and I and when you get into that place when you kind of click into that and you find that place in your heart, you'll find that you have an opportunity to have these conversations with other people in a way that that just reinforces that, again, you're exactly where you're supposed to be and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we've been going about an hour.
Oh my gosh. Well, that might be a new record for us.
Yeah,
That's
so yeah, we can't.
a short record I
A
mean.
short record,
We never have this deep of a conversation in less than in an hour.
yeah. Um, so if people want to connect with you, how do they do that?
Just Google me, I guess. People can connect with me. It's just my name is everywhere. Scott Shang, Schang.
Yeah.
I'm only on Facebook and LinkedIn as far as social media goes. And I have a podcast. I guess I'm on YouTube.
Yeah.
Or just connect with you. And you've made several connections to me that I'm just like, man, it just feels like, feels like I've known these people forever. So yeah, maybe that's the best way is reach out to you and connect them to me. But I'm out there. I'm easy to find. I don't hide anywhere. And I
And I
always love
think
to have these conversations.
I kind of want to bring it back to how we started this off, because it's really beautiful. This is actually extremely beautiful for me to, I've been trying for years and years to get people to see that they can show up as themselves in whatever space they're in, right? In whatever, that I was the one walking around as an insurance underwriter, it was like, oh, there's Andrea, the Zen one, right? Zen wasn't even like my practice, but I mean, like, you can show up as you are in your space and be yourself.
Yeah.
This is what changes the whole thing, is by each of us. We don't always have to run away to something else. It's okay if you do, but you don't have to. Do you enjoy where you are and what you do? Is there something that inspires you? There's so much shame and like hiding in the spiritual communities, and I don't care if it's, like in the spaces where I hang out anyways, a lot of this talk around ascension and expansion and the shift and all of that. There's so many people, there's so many healers, honestly, or practitioners who do multiple things, but to identify as anything other than that thing, they think it diminishes them now, or that they're stuck in some old paradigm. And we have to meet ourselves. Like, this is really on my heart these days. We have to meet ourselves right where we are and just stop asking for permission to be yourself and to bring the light. Because that's how we change things. If you want them changed.
Well, and I think to build on that is validation will never come from an external source.
Yes.
That's what I got.
I love it. All right, friends. Well, this is so great. And I'm lucky enough I get to talk with Scott again. If you'd like us to have more of these conversations, drop us a little note in the comments. We'll probably do it again anyways, whether you comment or not. So
we might turn it into a little Zoom call. You never know.
Yeah. But otherwise, thank you for being here, Scott.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, listener, watcher, whatever you are, however you're consuming this delicious conversation. Thank you for showing up for yourself and for continuing to shine. I see you and I feel you. So peace out.
Bye.